President Trump's pledge to wipe out the notoriously violent MS-13 gang is gaining traction in New York. Authorities say 45 gang members, including 39 linked to that notorious gang, have been arrested in Long Island in a recent sweep. Here to discuss with him now, Jessie, Duff, and Gina Loudon. Ladies, this is absolutely amazing. We talk about all of the things that have harmed this country, particularly all the things that we've allowed to fester over the last 8 years. But this is the most violent gang, I think, that we've ever known. Their tactics are right up there with ISIS. And I don't know how they got in New York, but they have been wreaking havoc and they have destroyed lives, Jessie Jane. This is great news.
Absolutely. They are actually the greatest threat to the United States outside of ISIS. They are originally from El Salvador, and this type of gang activity is because these young children, when they were young, walking home from school, would see decapitated bodies on the side of the road. As they fled their country and came here, we now have generations of MS-13. They have taken over even the narco drug routes from the Bloods, Crips, and they're a dominant force in all of our federal penitentiaries. They are a great threat, and this is wonderful that ICE is going after them aggressively and holding no punches on this.
Yeah, Gina, this was a key campaign promise. Jeff Sessions came to New York. He went to Long Island. He promised that community that he would fix these things on behalf of President Trump, and they're getting it done.
This is such promising news, Charles. As somebody who lives right on the border and spends a lot of time also in New York, I can tell you that I know very personal incidents right along these lines from this particular gang. They, of course, their leadership has asked them to, or ordered them rather, to kill people in New York. And the way they do their killings is ritualistic and satanic, often with machetes, even sticks, chopping off of limbs, things like this. It's a very sickening, kind of perverse order. And upon initiation, just to get into this gang, you're ordered to, quote unquote, get wet, which means to shed blood of another human being. And so this has really come down to essentially being a sort of a terrorist organization within our walls. I think we tend to think of gangs as something that only happens in cities and prey upon one another, but it's vastly expanded beyond that. And so I'm glad that President Trump is giving it this attention.
And to your point, Jessie Jane, this is something that we've actually allowed to be imported into our country. Does this bolster the argument for building the wall immediately? I mean, it's sort of gotten, sort of fades into the backdrop every now and then. It was talked about a lot today on social media after Ann Coulter was complaining. But, we know President Trump has his plate full, but does the American public need to understand there's a reason we need that wall?
Yes, there are actually a lot of the youth that have come over the borders to flee from the countries that they're in. They've had about 150,000 youth, and we're talking unaccompanied youth, and many who were smuggled into this country. And they have been settled with the offices of relocation for refugees. Now, these people are very vulnerable. Many of them are not part of MS-13, but become victims of MS-13, but that is where they recruit them from. So they get a lot of these young people who are here trying to escape where they came from, where there was probably MS-13, and they get recruited right into it. These are guerrilla warfare. They know how to even create weapons when there's no weapons that exist. They're trained this. It's generational, and so they're very advanced in their techniques and brutalizing people and make their money off of drug trafficking, robbery, and all of the other usual nonsense that most gangs do.
Today, I didn't get a chance to ask you earlier today, President Trump's reversing some of these Obama moves with Cuba. Certainly, that was one of the more embarrassing, I think, aspects of President Obama's candidacy when he did the wave and that weird handshake, broken wrist kind of thing. Right move for you, Gina?
The contrast of President Obama shaking hands with a dictator regime compared with the contrast of the president today, President Trump, shaking hands with the victims of these humanitarian atrocities, the real people of Cuba, our immigrants here in the United States. A truly beautiful step toward making America great again. Yes.
All right, ladies, thank you very much. And by the way, just